tuning in. You're listening live to the Angel Rock. I'm your host, Lorilei Potvin. Just a few things before we introduce our wonderful guest tonight. You're listening to UPRN on 107.7 in Louisiana. Also want to remind you, you can watch the show on United Public Radio Network's YouTube channel right now live. We have a chat room there. I keep an eye on the chat room. So if you have any questions, comments, I'd like to make you guys part of the show. What else can I tell you? Sorry, I just got off after a while. We had a paranormal host chat before. I hope you guys tune in on Mondays. 1 week it's a paranormal, 1 week it is the Centralist. That's our owner and producer, Joe Montalto's show, The Centralist. And I want to thank him because he makes my job so easy. He does all the hard work behind the scenes. So thank you, Joe. And a little bit about myself. I'm from Canada, celebrating Early Canada Day. Our host is actually Canadian too, but like I said, I'll introduce her in just a second. I'm a psychic medium. I'm also a crystal Reiki energy healer, Akashic records practitioner. I'm also a what else am I? My brain's not working tonight. Usually I just have it like this. I'm a spiritual teacher and mentor. I'm also a nurse. And yeah, I have 2 groups on Facebook as well. I usually say that at the end, but I'll remind you, I have one on called Paranormal University and the other one called the Angel Rocker Tribe on Facebook. This guest has actually been on my show before, but she's back. We're going to discuss, we barely scratched the surface the last time. She's a fellow Canadian. Her name is Karen Holton. I'm going to tell you a little bit about her. She's an educator, channel guide, and ascension coach. Her professional experience includes well-being and ascension coaching, counseling, creating and implementing workshops, lectures, self-help sessions, and consciousness-raising social events. Try and say that 3 times fast. Karen also maintains presence on Facebook and other social media, including her YouTube channel, where she has a weekly show called the Quantum Guides Show. She has a lot of great content. We're going to talk about some of that tonight. I got to get back to, as well as videos about the gorgeous Zen Domes Orgonite she designs and sells. And she's got a new part of her line we're going to talk about. And it says as well, I'm reading her bio here. Sorry. Sorry, I'm going to go back to this line. It says she designs and sells quantum health transformation and the fringe view, as well as much, much more. Welcome, Karen. Boy, my mouth is not working tonight. Sorry about that. Welcome. So glad to have you here.
So good to be here. Thank you so much.
Well, I didn't bring this up as well, but you and I talked before the show, as I usually do with most of my hosts. You're also a friend of mine. And you know what, folks, actually, I have it here. I want to remind myself, Karen was so gracious. I ended up, now where's my other one? I'm going to find it. I'll show you. I have 2 of her pieces and she knows me well. She knows I love skulls and I love angels. This one, and it doesn't do it justice, folks. This is one of the pieces from Karen with an angel. The other one is right. I think it's close to here. I had it here. My dog was in here. I can't find the other one, Karen. I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's okay.
I'll post it as on the show notes. I'm going to find it afterwards. I just want to keep digging. And I was counting on having time in between, but actually my husband, Del, who has the delicious recipe, gave up his hours so we could continue with the discussion about the paranormal and the host chat. The other one has a skull in it. It's just equally as beautiful. So, but we were talking, and with the climate out there, and you always surprise me every time I talk to you, there's something new. You actually used to do quite a bit of activism, right? Yourself here in Canada? Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
And with the climate that's out there, you've had some run-ins with the police yourself, haven't you?
Oh, yeah. What I was hoping to do is to talk a little bit about the groups that I was involved in.
Sure.
And why we did what we did. And basically, we were trying to raise awareness to what was going on with what at that time seemed a huge future event, because we're talking almost 30 years ago, and we knew the New World Order was coming. And of course, we were trying to raise awareness, and we were trying to get the press. At that time, we still believed the press was fairly independent. We were trying to get them to cover our stories. We wanted people to know. And essentially, what happened was we were brutalized by the police, so it made us really think twice about going out and doing any more. But they also tried to frame it as though we were some kind of terrorists. So they would tear up the place and make a big mess, and the media the news just lied and said we were armed and all this stuff that just wasn't true. And so today what I was hoping we could do is I'd like to talk a little bit about the groups I was involved in, what we saw coming, and then how we saw that unfold. And I'd like to speak from a British Columbia perspective, because I was on Vancouver Island during most of this. And so, you know, things change province to province, state to state, country to country. So this may not be exactly how it's played out in other areas, but I think you will get quite a bit about what I'm saying. And then I have some conclusions, and then I wanted to sort of tip it over into what we can do. What can we do? Where do we have personal power? What changes can we make on a very personal level that helps to change the world? Instead of, and in my opinion, based on my own experiences, instead of getting out there and doing the rabble rousing and the protesting, and it's so unsafe. I can't tell you how unsafe that is. And it doesn't really do any good. I don't think it does. I think it's very media controlled. And there are alternatives that we can do that make way more sense, keep us safer, and, you know, make us more powerful, and collectively and individually.
I agree. The one thing I would love for you to share, if you're able to, if you're not comfortable, that's fine. But how are you aware of this so many years ago? I have been aware of it myself, but not for as long as you have. And we're pretty well in the same age group. So there's got to be a way you found out so quickly. Mind you, you might have been more open to hearing it. I mean, I had my eyes opened actually from living in a house with paranormal activity that just opened a whole realm of the world I didn't know about. And it has nothing to do with the paranormal. It's just when you start looking at the alternative. I'm getting goosebumps telling you this. Lucy, that's my sign for truth.
I'm getting goosebumps too. Stop it. I'm getting goosebumps too.
I am. Like, look, I got goosebumps. But when you open your eyes to what you always thought maybe wasn't possible, or we've got Zach Man in the chat room, and he had lost his puppy this weekend, Penelope. So he's a regular viewer. He calls in usually Tuesday nights. I wanted to send my love and healing and deepest condolences to him. That's all. He did have a comment too. He said the New World Order is already here. Just goes under sugarcoat names like globalization.
Yeah, totally.
The floor is yours.
So last time I was on the show, I talked about this angel experience that opened me up spiritually and changed my life. And it was only weeks after that I was sitting in my circumstances. I wasn't very happy. I was a bit confused, a bit dazed and confused by what my experience. And
do you want to refresh sorry, Karen, just for a sec. Do you want to refresh just in case we may have some new listeners? They may not have heard your angel experience.
Okay. Well, basically, I was, I'm a very, very intuitive, and I pick up on everybody's feelings. I'm an extreme empath. And I moved into this little place I was renting, and unbeknownst to me, the man who had lived there before me had killed himself in that place. And I picked up the imprint and had the urge to kill myself, strong urge to kill myself. And I was actually going to do it. And maybe a night or two before I was going to do it, I had an angel experience. To me, it was an explosive because it was so huge. It was like 1,000 voices all speaking in one voice. And they told me that nobody has to stay on earth. When the suffering gets to a certain level, we certainly can cash out. And then I don't know whether we could come back or what, I don't know. But they told me that I could go if I wanted to. And I said, to be honest with you, I feel ripped off because I have had a lot of trauma in my life. And I felt that all I've been doing is coping with trauma. And I knew I was here for something more important. And at that point, I didn't have my pre-birth contract. I didn't remember it, which I do now very clearly. And so they said, well, if you want to stay, we'll give you a helper. And I said, well, do I have to decide right now? Because that's a pretty huge thing. I mean, who has angels tell you that you're going to have a helper? I got to think about this. This is serious. So a couple of days later, I went for a walk and I realized what I wanted. What I wanted was wisdom, because if I had wisdom, I could correct my life. I could help other people. I could be happy. I could accomplish whatever I wanted, but I knew wisdom was the key. And so I said, could I please have wisdom? And they asked me if I wanted the quick method or the slow method. I know that sounds ridiculous, but this was my experience.
It doesn't. I've had people share that with me personally before, ask that exact question.
And so I got the quick method, which is the really intense method of learning. And so shortly after that, like within a couple of weeks, I was feeling depressed and I heard a voice, and that was the first time I actually heard my guides really loud and in my head. And they said, go to the Women's Center. And I didn't really know what a women's center was about or anything like that, but I started going down there and I started volunteering, and they gave me the support I needed to start an anti-poverty group. So the group, the first thing I did was I called a meeting, and I had hundreds of poor people show up, and they were all talking about what a horrible time they were having on all levels, because most people who are middle class don't have, or even working class, have no idea how bad it can be for Canadians. There's really like two Canadas. There's the privileged Canada, and then there is the down and out Canada, okay? So anyway, I realized that I could not offer support to hundreds of people. So I decided to turn the group into a social justice group. So it was called the Comox Valley Anti-Poverty Social Justice Group, because I wanted to do something about poverty. And so when I formed the group, I networked with other groups like TAPS, which stands for Together Against Poverty, which was in Victoria. And I joined a coalition that was in Vancouver, and the name of the coalition was End Legislated Poverty. And at that point, I got the training to understand that poverty is legislated. That's not just an accident that happens. That's not because people are bad and undeserving. It's not because they're acting out inappropriately. It's actually legislated into the system. And the more I learned, the more I felt compelled to do something with this information. And so they are the ones that we would go over and go to these huge, big coalition meetings. And they were the ones that opened my eyes to the G Summits. And the G Summits started in 1975. So your person on chat who said that it was already established a long time ago. Yeah, they're not kidding.
He's from the U.S. because
he's absolutely spot on.
Because it's not unique to Canada. This is going on in civilized countries. Never mind third world nations. It's the whole nation practically.
It's the whole planet. So they started off in 1975 with a G20. And what these G meetings mean, not to be confused with 5G, which is completely different, but these G groups. So they started off with a G20, and that group, and by the way, I'm not an expert on this, but I'm giving it to you as best I understand it. And so these were 20 of the Earth's largest economies. Now, that could be a country like United States, but it also could be a corporation like Microsoft. It's the 20 most powerful, biggest economies that qualified them. So then they kind of narrowed it down to G10, and then they narrowed it down to G8, and then they narrowed it down to G6. So then it became even concentrated into more powerful and fewer people making the decisions, okay? And the way we found out about it was because information was being leaked. I think it got leaked out of France, where they were holding some of the meetings. And this has all become like the Bilderberger and all that stuff you hear about today. But this is back then. So I got started in this in the early 1990s, which now, unbelievably, is like 30 years ago. And this is the things that they told us were coming. So I've just got some notes here so that I don't miss the important stuff. Okay, so first of all, I don't know how long this has been so, but we became really aware that both Canada and the United States are corporations. They're not countries. We believe they're countries, but they're not. They're massive corporations. And we are citizens of the corporation, not citizens of a country. And so this is the kind of thing that they were planning on doing. This was at that time, 30 years ago in the future. So the first thing they did was they passed laws that made them be able to roll back existing laws. So like, for instance, over the years, we've developed laws to help lessen pollution, or to save certain species of animals, or have certain ethical treatment of individuals. And so just like Walmart rolls back their prices, well, they now have the power to roll back any laws that were in existence. That includes the Constitution of the United States. That includes the equivalent that we have here in Canada. They had the power to roll back every law. And so they set up a program to roll them back every year, little bit, little bit, little bit, little bit, little bit. They also made it so that any country, and I'll give for example, Canada, but this would apply for the United States, that they can bring in slave labor from any other country. And that would put all the unions, destroy all the unions. That would destroy minimum wage. That would destroy all the things that, because we have to, we work here, we need to make a certain reasonable income to pay the rent and to eat. So they could bring in from another country, and I'm not picking on China, but that was one of the countries where they were planning on bringing in workforces from China.
I want to share with you right now, this is how I found out about this, having this discussion with you. And I said, this is so timely to have you on the show again, is in my city where I am, in Thunder Bay. I said to you, everywhere you go, it seems to be, and you know what, you made up a really good point, because I said to you, I'm not racist. And you said, it's really sad that we even have to preface something like that, because I know you're not, and I know you're not. But everybody here seems to be from Pakistan, and that seems to be the nationality right now. They're buying all the businesses, but they'll have like 40 or 50 people in a house, and because they have to. And I wasn't aware of this till you told me this. I knew that sometimes they get promised, whatever, to come here. But this is, I'm beginning to believe you, because everywhere you go, it is Pakistani employees. None of them speak English. Yeah. And I said to you, I don't have a problem with that. I think everybody should have a chance to come to a civilized country and make money. But that's when I found out what you told me. Like a lot of them are promised the world, and they get here and they're paid nothing. They're not covered by our minimum wage.
This is not about individuals, because most of these individuals have been lied to. They had professions. They were doctors, lawyers. They had good jobs, but they fell for this lie that if they came to Canada, they'd actually do really well and become rich. Turns out they're doing security jobs, they're doing fast food jobs, they're doing all these jobs, and often they're not being paid minimum wage. And all kinds, especially what we would call contract work. Any kind of contract work, so that they can be earning $10 a day and putting in 8 hours, that kind of thing. So that not only destroys our labor market, but then, as you know, a lot of manufacturing and all of that's been taken off continent. So there just isn't the jobs. And so it's very easy for someone who has a good job, say their husband's working at the oil fields and they're doing nails or something at the salon, and they're bringing in good money and they live really well, and they're being told from the propaganda and through the media, right, that people who don't have what they have, oh, it's just because they're lazy, they don't want to work, they're on drugs, all these lies to keep people from being outraged. So they go, well, wait a minute. You know, I'm not comfortable going to bed with my belly full at night, knowing that there are other people who don't have enough. It's a huge illusion. So just a couple more things. So of course, the dissolving of boundaries around countries. And then the big thing is removing all the environmental and human protections, eliminating them completely. And I'll give you some examples when you're ready for me to go on to what I actually saw happen in British Columbia that was a result of these rolling back these laws and being able to for them to just do whatever they want with
I want to share a couple of Zach's comments. He's in the
Sure.
US. He's got some good comments. He said,
Sure.
the middle class, both in Canada and the US, is disappearing. That's part of the
Yeah.
plan, isn't it?
Yep.
And the last comment is, and we discussed this on the show previous, Dell and Joe, the owner, got into quite a discussion. Dell was saying what Zach is saying, and Joe saying, no way. But Zach Man himself says China is now slowly becoming the predominant superpower in the world. And that's what Dell was saying. Joe said, no way, that's not happening. Yeah, it's happening.
Oh, yeah.
But go on. You can give your examples. Please go ahead.
Okay. So these are some of the noticeable results that happened since then. So I can see the evidence that what we were told about this G8 or whatever is true. There's many names. Some people call them the cabal. Some people call them the Illuminati. Some people call them the 1%, whatever. So we're all talking about the same. Yes. So the first thing I noticed is they removed all the social workers. So I went to university and I got a degree in social work. I didn't want to work in child apprehension because, I don't have a high opinion of many of the social workers that work in child apprehension. And I felt that I had too much white privilege to work with First Nations culture. And so what I did was I took all the fringe courses. I specialized in family counseling and I specialized in addictions and in addiction therapy. And then I did my 4th year practicum at an organization called the Status of Women Anti-Poverty Group that's also in Victoria. And then, so what happened is while I was getting my education to become a social worker, they laid off 30,000 social workers. Now, people might go, well, who needs social workers? They're not that important. But if you understand the context, when a person is down and out or had a disability, they could go and see a social worker. The social worker had ties and networked with the doctors, with welfare, with the services, all the things, home care, all the things that people need. You know what I'm talking about? To have
community. That was one of the first people I would call if I needed some networking done. I mean, mine would be for medical, but I go in as look at it holistically, the situation, because I'm in somebody's home. What better place? I'm the first contact. So I had to know when to call the social worker and when not. But most oftentimes you had to call them because if they're, there's so many things that you guys would be able to connect with that I didn't have the time or, the resources. That was partly why I worked so closely with social workers. Absolutely.
And the thing about the social workers they're not all great, but quite a few of them are, and they really cared. So they would listen to what your situation is, listen to what happened to you, and then be an advocate for the client so that the client had all the things they needed. And by the way, we had a very low homeless rate at that time because people were supported. So they got rid of 30,000 social workers. So here I get out of a university and with this huge student loan debt, and I couldn't get a job if my life depended on it. So that's one thing. Another thing they did was they deinstitutionalized mental people. Now, I'm not saying that the institutions were good things, but you can't take people who've been in institutions all their lives. Many of the people in the institutions were not even mentally handicapped. They just were throwaway children that ended up in these institutions. And guess what? They became severely disabled from that horrible environment. So what did they do? They just closed them all down. And then they started a few group homes for the more serious cases, but the rest of them became homeless people. So all of a sudden you get these homeless people, and the working class and the middle classes are all looking down on these homeless people and irritated by people that are begging for money and people that are sleeping in parks. But these people have had no training on how to look after themselves. I mean, if this doesn't make you cry, it should. It should. Okay.
I've seen all this stuff working. When I went into community nursing, I had come from the hospital, from the NICU. I was fed up. I almost gave up. I almost became an RCMP officer, if you can believe that. Thank God for the Gulf War, because I went all through everything and hiring freeze was on. I was supposed to come back 6 months later, and I didn't. But I ended up applying to the community. And I got the poorest part of our city with the most crime, the most homeless people, addiction issues. And I almost didn't take the job. And I'll tell you right now, I thank God every day I did, because that was the biggest life learning experience for me about people, about culture, about all the misinformation you've been fed about the media, everything you have said about people that are homeless. No, they're not there. Nobody would choose to be homeless. Nobody would choose. I even say nobody chooses addiction. You wake up in the morning and nobody says, hey, I think I'm going to become a drug addict today. Nobody.
And nobody wakes up in the morning and says, gee, I think I'd love to be a hooker. I'd love to be a sex trade worker. Boy, I can't wait to get out there and do that. I can't imagine anybody doing that, okay? But this is a response to having those supports removed. So then they closed all the women's centers and they axed all the anti-poverty groups. So now there was no one to stand up and say, look at what the government is doing. There was no one to tell the truth. So that got rid of all of that.
The one thing I do want to even add, Karen, the one thing I'm going to share with you, like Della is Métis. We watch a lot of documentaries, and this is when Justin Trudeau, our prime minister, came into power. There was a journalist that was First Nations that made him come out and look at some of these places. There, I think it's called Slave Lake, area 81 and 80. I could be wrong. Anyway, she took him to these areas. You could tell he was appalled, because we're all fed that they get everything free and we're just paying blah 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 blah, right? These people hadn't had water for 20 years. Water, you need water to live. They had to wait for water to be delivered. No plumbing, no nothing. We don't hear about this, and this happens all over the world. This isn't just unique to our own situation or country. And that's why I keep saying, I don't have a problem with supporting foreign aid, but look after our own people first.
Clean up your own backyard, for God's sake. Absolutely. So then the other thing they did is they stopped subsidized home care. So you and I have both had horrible long experiences in the hospital. I don't need to talk about that. But when we got home, I couldn't function. I couldn't make a meal. I couldn't even get to the bathroom and back by myself. And there was no home care. But there's no home care for a lot of people. Now, there may be in some areas some home care for the most severe cases, but mostly not. And so now old people don't have someone to come in and run the vacuum for them and have a cup of tea with them. And all of that is gone, all of it. Now they just warehouse all the old people into long-term care and into these old folks' homes. And I don't even get me started on that. So they also reduced the amount of social assistance. So in the year, I would say right up to about 2010, people were getting less, whether they were on disability or social assistance, than they got in the 1980s. Because that all got cut down. So even myself, when I was too ill to work, my disability didn't even cover my rent. And I had to go out and collect pop bottles and do all kinds of things. And I got treated horribly in society because I was just trying to have food. It was that bad. Thank God my circumstances are not as dire today.
I want to add too from Zach, because he's at it again, he's in the US. He said, we are also seeing trade jobs disappear and they are in high demand. Society has pushed for everyone to go to college and enslave young people with massive amounts of debt. I agree, Zach. The other thing is, and Dell has gone to college. He's got environmental engineering. He's got a lot of different trades, but he made a really good point. He's an iron worker. And I met this with other people that are tradespeople. Even that's looked down on. That you don't even see that kind of training in a lot of schools anymore. We need tradespeople. We need them out there, and you don't see it advertised. Or why do you need to go to college? And I've seen young people come out and all they've been able to do is work at McDonald's or something. How are you going to pay that debt back?
Well, that happened to my son. He went to school and he took heavy duty mechanics and he took welding and he was looking for an apprenticeship and there was nothing. So the colleges and universities are part of the problem. They're sucking in all these people, even me. Oh, I'm going to get a great job. I can't tell you how much time and effort I sacrificed away from my children who needed me because I thought I was going to get a great job and I could then have a higher standard of living and give them a better quality of life. You know, and so so I also, part of the problem is these big institutions and then saddling everyone with these bone crushing, unforgivable student loans that anytime you go out and work at McDonald's or anything, they just pull your wages right from the employer and you have nothing to live on. So again, setting people up for homelessness and extremes in poverty. And then the other thing I want to say is they've rolled back all of the rules and laws that protected the environment. So there used to be a cap on how many trees they could cut down and things like that. That's all been removed. They can do what they damn well please, and they do now. Plus, another thing that's happened is a lot of our organic food is now coming from China. And I'll tell you, I've had people who worked at customs tell me at the border, what happens is a truck comes in, they bring in the paperwork. They get the paperwork stamped, they hand them a roll of organic stickers, and the guy goes. They never look at anything. They don't look at what's in the truck. They don't look at anything. And in China, this so-called organic food from China is completely non-regulated. You don't know what you're getting. You're still paying a fortune because you think it's a little bit better. You think you're trying to get away from GMO. So the only way you can get away from GMO is to go organic, but that's no longer what Wikipedia says organic is. It's gone. And so that means that toxic food is standard. It's really hard for people to function without proper food. And so these are the things that I have witnessed in my everyday life that many people don't even know that this is happening.
You knew this was coming though, but the other thing, even I'm going to add that a lot of and I can only speak from our perspective being Canadian, our parliament has now been shut down for the whole summer, which means our fearless leader, as I call him, Justin Castro, can change any laws he wants. Doesn't have to go before Parliament. Doesn't have to do anything. He can do whatever he wants for the whole summer. And I've been.
That's all part of the New World Order because they let them run amok and they let them do these things. That's their gift.
I was likening him to Oprah because whenever you watched him speak on TV during the COVID-19 crisis, you get $1 million and you get $1 million and we're going to send $1 million here, or you're going to get this, you're going to get this. And then I am on permanent disability as a nurse because of my back. My son is an adult that is severely disabled, and so many people fell through the cracks, even that he did give money out to. I think there's a one-time payment coming of $600, which is nothing
I
really,
don't know.
because the cost of living.
I don't get anything. I'm on a disability as well on account of, I don't want to get into it on your show, but I've got some
check.
substantial reasons. But I don't want to take
last week. No, he
Sorry?
just mentioned this. He just mentioned this last week. No, I don't want to take it either, because here in Canada, you usually have to repay it. And the other part is, and again, we're only speaking from a Canadian perspective. I'm actually glad that Zach is here, because he's in the United States and he's pretty up on a lot of this stuff as well. And that's why I thought it was so timely to have you here, because, and when you try and talk to people about this, and we're talking about 80% of the world, they are not aware. They think it's just all garbage, that you're crazy, tinfoil hat wearing, conspiracy theorist. And like I said, I'm really glad when we do get to this, I know we will, about what we can do. Because like you said, all of this protesting, and they're not even realizing, like, the people behind these slogans and why they're there. Like Black Lives Matter. Yes, Black Lives Matter. Everybody matters. But you're turning people against each other when people say all matter. You don't know who's funding that. Nobody's looked at who's funding it. All you got to do is say George Soros. And I guarantee you, I encourage anybody listening to this, if you don't know who he is, do some research. Part of this is exactly what we're talking about. Go ahead. Sorry, Karen.
No, it's totally relevant. That's totally relevant. And so yeah, I did a lot of protesting, and all that happened to me was I was brutalized. I mean, at one point the cops stormed us and told us to get down, and I didn't get down fast enough, and they grabbed me and they threw me down. I had carpet burn all down the side of my face. My glasses were broken. They kept dropping me on my knees, and that was before I lost weight. I was a bigger woman, and destroyed my knees. I still to this day cannot kneel at all. And there's nothing you can do about it. So I actually pressed charges against the Victoria Police Department, because that's where this particular thing happened. And guess what? They do an internal review. And of course, they found nothing wrong. And that I was the problem because I was a terrorist. And no, I was a single mom with kids trying to go to school, trying to make my life, and trying to let people know that there's something seriously wrong here. You know, because now, like in Alberta, the oil industry's collapsing, and all these people who, I don't know how much money they made, but they live in these little, they're not gated communities, but they're equivalent. They're these huge houses with their boats and their RVs and
yeah, exactly what you're saying. RVs, living in this beautiful house, hot tub. They had to leave.
And now they're all losing their jobs, and they're shitting bricks.
Well, they're all in debt up to their eyeballs, and thinking it was a never-ending stream of money. But this is happening everywhere. And like I said, and what I really believe that this COVID-19 was no accident. And if people don't believe me, please look up Event 201, October 2019.
Yes.
If you watch the video, you will think it was filmed probably yesterday. The other part is, I think it's a test to see how much they could actually get away with. And I also believe, and nobody deserves to die the way George Floyd did. There's a lot of stuff that's been coming out. My big point that nobody seems to have seen this video, and it does get taken down, when the ambulance shows up, there is an armed police officer that gets out of the back of the ambulance. I believe probably a sheriff. He had a beige short sleeve shirt, brown pants, with a gun in his holster. No resuscitation equipment, no oxygen, No CPR. They had that window still to do CPR. All they did was pick him up, slam him on the gurney, put him in the back. And folks, some people tried to argue with me, well, I've seen police before with ambulances. Absolutely. They'll protect the EMTs when they're there. If there's something going on that they could be damaged and they can't do their work. There was no EMTs. Why did that happen? What if police officers show up, 4 different cars, for one person who was supposedly passing a fake $20 bill? And nobody's seeing this. Nobody's waking up to this. I think this was a test to see how much they were going to get away with.
So I just wanted to sort of sum up the doom and gloom by saying that all of this is feeding into the drug and sex trade industry, because people who are desperate, they've got to eat, they got to feed their kids.
Right.
And so this is another thing I want to say, because I've lived almost all my adult life, in low income areas. And so what happens is you get all these fine people who think they're doing a public service by having suites for rent in low income places. But the problem is they're so full of black mold, they're not being looked after. The conditions are horrible.
Yep.
Absolutely. Would think you were in the slums of Calcutta, the way many people have to live, and then they have to go out, and many of them have to do drugs in order to do the sex trade. But another thing I saw that was so disturbing is they have these low income apartment areas, where it's very densely populated.
I've seen all of them when I worked in that area. One place I went into, an elderly couple, I went in to admit them to our program as a nursing program, as a health supervision. They didn't speak English. There was not one place where there wasn't a bug. It was like something out of a horror movie. Again, who did I call right away? Social worker was calling everybody. You get these people out of this house. I had to leave that place, left my bag outside. I was still working. I had to go home and shower. There were so many bugs. Like wall to wall, every room. It was horrible.
Yeah, I've seen people growing mushrooms, just not planting them. They just grow in the carpet. And so now when you're someone who has a disability, or you're someone who has a problem, you line up at a government office in the same lineup as people who are picking up permits to do some plumbing, people that are getting permits for electrical stuff, lined up out the door. You get one clerk who sits at a computer and she just punches in numbers and sees what it says. There is no compassionate human contact at all. And I want to tell you one other story. I was living in the Comox Valley, and I had my doctor had filled out the forms for me to try medical cannabis. And so I had found a designated grower, and I did everything was legal and was medically on the up and up. And I got a knock at the door, and a man came to my door, and he told me that where I was living was in the jurisdiction of this gang, not that gang, and that I had to sell my medicine, and I had to give them the money from the sale of my medicine, or I would be killed, or worse. Like, for instance, they would put people in little cages and keep them there for days and days in their own pee and poo and nothing to eat, and this kind of horrible circumstances. And then out of this complex, it was just half a block away, I would notice these very severely disabled people coming out, handing little packages to cars. They had the window down, they take the package, give them the money, and then the person would shuffle back in. So they're being forced into doing all the drug dealing. They were forced to do all the deliveries. They were forced to do all that. And if they don't do it, they get beat up. And we're talking about the most vulnerable people in our society. So I don't want to go on too much about this. I think everybody's really got the picture. I mean, I'm happy with whatever you want to add to it, Lorilei, or someone on chat. Well, but I'd like to shift it into what we can do, if that's okay, because this is pretty horrible.
Go ahead.
Or just people would never believe it. If I hadn't have witnessed it, I wouldn't have believed it. But there is an underbelly to every town and every city, and this is what's going on. Even in Red Deer, Alberta, I know of a woman who is so severely disabled mentally, she can't function. And her psychiatrist knows that she has to go out and do prostitution to have enough to eat, and he will not sign the forms for her to get on a disability income. So I'm just saying, this is stuff I've personally witnessed.
Mm-hmm. No, all I was going to say, I haven't been working. And again, I have a university degree as well. I had planned on being a doctor. Through an accident, through no fault of my own, I went to a very rundown trailer park that I didn't even know existed. That was a rural inner city. I've lived in the city my whole life. I used the side door, and it was like, I always say it's not my job to judge, and it's not. And it was a single man, and it was so run down. It was owned by our city too. And it looked like a hoarder home. So there was a little path all the way through. I went in to do a dressing, and he was a really nice man. And I said to him, "Could I use your front door to leave, please?" I said, "It's closer to my car." And he said, "Oh, okay." When I stepped out, he had a rug covering a hole in his top step stoop. I fell right through and shattered all my discs. So I had practically crawled back in. And I said to him, "Why wouldn't you tell me?" He goes, "Well, actually, I forgot till you stepped out." He goes, "But I was so embarrassed too." He said, "I covered it with a rug so nobody would see how I was living." So that's how I ended up not working anymore. I'm not able to. I found one doctor too. Like, we have a different healthcare system. I understand that nothing's perfect. It's not a utopia. And I understand, I usually always go to the positive. That's why I'm glad you're going to have some solutions. But everything you've said, I have to agree with you. I've seen it. I've seen it in the US myself. I mean, when I went on spring break, when I was in university, we stayed with a friend of, I was going with a friend of mine who had a friend that lived there. And some of the things I saw, like, honestly, I've never shared this on air. I'm going to share it. One night we were out and we'd had a couple drinks, and he was driving on the way home. And this African American woman had been hit so hard by a car. She had flown out of her shoes, and it broke my heart. It still haunts me to this day. I knew I couldn't stop. He wasn't going to stop anyways, but I knew it was a bad part of town. But here I am. I'm a nurse. I could have done something, but I knew I couldn't. First of all, I'd had a couple drinks, more than a couple drinks. I mean, it was in my early 20s, but to this day, and just so much poverty, but it's in every city, it's everywhere, but people expect that to be the norm. And then again, the same thing with the news people. It was a beautiful thing that Joe did tonight. He asked us right before we ended the show, each one of us hosts, do you have any advice for the listeners? Whether it was paranormal, no matter what it was, everybody had great advice, including, question everything, do your own research, take a look around. Even when working with mentors, find the perfect mentor for yourself. Work with a lot of different people. Pick a mentor who has a vast amount of knowledge in a lot of different fields. Now, she was coming from a psychic perspective and mediumship. She was talking about mediumship, but this can apply to anything in life. But we really need to, if something's bothering people, to wake up and start looking beyond what you see on your TV. There's books, there's people that have gone through, or even with yourself volunteering, some of the things you discovered yourself at the Women's Center, like you said. So now it's time to shift into, like you said, what can we do about this? Oh, actually, Zach just asked if you wouldn't mind. He would love to join in the conversation. No, Zach, I can add you. You'll really like him, Karen, actually. If you're okay with that.
Sure.
Just Skype is not working well, but I will try and add you, Zach. We'll see what happens here, okay? I may have to turn my video off. We'll see. Just give me 1 sec, Karen. But sure. That's what you found, right? That for yourself, that your body no longer physically could be doing what you were doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you've taken a different approach now, right? And this is something everybody could do as well, right? Like, this is something that could sort of unite, and because we're being silenced too.
Yeah. Well, actually, I got a program. I call it the Quantum Health Transformation. I actually got it in a download, and I got it within a second. And it's so much information. It's free. It's absolutely free. That was the important thing. It had.
Sorry, honey, you might have to explain what a download is. Some people may not know what it is.
Okay, a download, I don't even really know how to describe it because I don't really know how it works. But basically, I'm just sitting or standing or doing something, and it's like a packet gets dropped into my brain.
Okay.
And it starts to unfold, and it tells me information, and it gives me it works with my intuition, and it tells me what I need to know. So all of a sudden, it's like exploding with all this data, and it's too much to even look at. But over the next number of weeks and even months, it unfolds so that I understand it in human and in practical terms. So the information comes to me from an unseen force. Right. It gets dropped into my head. And then I have the job of what we call downstepping it, which means taking things from the high abstract where there's no words, there's just, I actually feel the information in my body. If that, I know that doesn't make any sense, but I actually feel it in my body. And then I come to understand it. And then I have to learn how to make it in a form that other people can understand it, and not start a religion, not start a cult, not think I'm better than anyone else, and try to take this very high level information and put it in terms that can be easily understood. It was important for it to be free, and it was important for it to be launched on the World Wide Web, because it's supposed to be available for everyone who has access to the internet, which is most of the world, I would say. It's the fastest way. I think even if I'd written it into a book and tried to sell the book, it wouldn't be as efficient as using social media.
I'm going to stop you just for a sec, honey. We've got Zach here. Zach, are you able to hear us?
Yes, I can. How are you ladies doing this evening?
We're good. Thanks, Zach, for calling in. This is Karen. She's a good friend of mine. She's brought up a lot of topics that I know you've got a lot to say. Did you have any questions for Karen before we move on to the positive and talk about some of the things that we can do to, instead of protesting and all the things we're seeing with people out there that's not really effective or working very well?
Yeah, there's a couple questions.
You might have to get a lot closer to your Wi-Fi, hun, because the Skype is really acting up tonight.
Eric, can you hear me better?
Yeah, that's better. Yeah, thanks.
I took like one step back, and now it's like, all right, I'm closer to the router now.
Perfect.
Hey, Karen, it's nice to meet you.
Hi. Nice to meet you.
So my question, here's one question that I do have with everything that's currently going on and all the topics that you discussed. In your opinion, where does Donald Trump fit in this equation?
I have to answer truthfully. I don't know. I really don't know. The kind of information I'm given is always true, is always lovely, is always helpful, but I'm never bogged down with the affairs of man. That is I think we're living in a time, for the first time in my life, I just sit back and go, I really don't know what's real. I don't believe my governments. I don't believe the media. I don't believe what they tell us on TV. I don't even believe what the doctor tells me anymore. I don't believe anything. I have no idea. So I've turned to a higher source, which each one of us has the capability of doing, and tapping into a higher force that can then tell us through our feelings, our sensations, our imaginings, our thoughts, what to do, what to believe, but more in the now and in the here, rather than information about what's going on globally or what Donald Trump is doing. I really don't know. I mean, I've got my suspicions, but to be honest, I don't know.
Okay. And so when you say that you turn really over to this higher power, I guess you can say, I guess my next question would be, in your, I'm trying to find the word to describe it. When you're doing some spiritual insight, have you ever do you ever use or should I say, what text would you say you would use as a basis in your spiritual insight when you're going through, when you're trying to find an answer to a question, whatever it might be? What have you consulted in the past? What would you recommend as really like a starting point for finding the answer that one is looking for?
Well, this is just my humble opinion. You know, please don't ever go out and do what I say or what I do. This is just my way of doing it. But I believe that we can find inspiration in anything. And I'll give you an example. You can open up a children's book and start reading it and get the most profound insights from that. So although I have got a lot of history because I used to be in religion, so I've read the Bible 3 times so that I know what it says. And thank God for that, because a lot of religions will tell you stuff and I can say, no, that's not what it says. But I don't even believe that is, I think that's been tampered. I think that our whole reality in the 3D has been so tampered that really going within the self is, to me, the most productive way. We don't need anybody to intercede for us. We have direct contact all the time with angels, with ETs, with an amazing array of spiritual beings. But we have free will and we have to ask them for help. And when we do, I don't know anyone who's ever been disappointed. And so my best information comes, well, I don't know, maybe not everyone's like me, but I don't have to go to scripture. I don't have to go to philosophers. I don't have to go anywhere. It's just a part of me and it just happens. And so I get all of my wisdom teaching just direct, and it's instant. And it's so full of mercy and love and compassion and kindness that I know it's from a good source. I know. And besides, I know because of the amazing results in my own life. So I don't know if I answered your question, Zach, but
I'd like to add. I'd like to add to that when you're Karen, actually. So
no, I'm done.
I didn't know if you. Okay. Zach, what I'd like to add to you, and you've had a couple readings with me, and again, working as a spiritual teacher and mentor, I have to agree with Karen that all of us have this, and we all use different names for it, whether you call it, I trust my gut, I just know, I don't know why I know. A lot of us don't listen to our bodies, your emotions, your thoughts. If we just stop, think about something, think how it feels. The other thing I'm going to say to you that I hope maybe this will resonate with you, maybe, or with anybody else out there that may be listening. One of the biggest questions, I'm sure you get asked this too, Karen, is people will say, well, when am I going to hear my guides? How am I going to know it's my guides? When am I going to hear them? Or they get hung up on the name or whatever. And I know that's not what you're asking. One of the biggest revelations for me, once I realized, and again, I'm just speaking from myself, but I have found this has worked for a lot of people that I've shared this with. When you're sitting there and you're quiet and you've got a problem, major issue, and we all have that inner voice. We're all questioning, what am I going to do about this? What am I going to do about this? Well, maybe I'll try this. Maybe I'll try that. All of a sudden, you get this stroke of genius. It's like, oh my gosh, why didn't I think of that before? Why didn't it happen before? Guess what? I truly believe that is your guides. They're not going to speak to you in a strange voice because you're going to think you're hearing voices. I'm going crazy. I'm going whatever. They're going to speak to you in the voice that you know is your own voice. But that came out of nowhere. But it was meant for your highest good. It was meant in love. You know, if you sit and you feel it out and you go, yeah, I think that just might work. And then you try it and it does. Mm-hmm. Those are the kind of things, that's how you start to tap into it. Or I know even when you've had a reading with me or other people have asked me, well, how did you know that? How did you know that? We all hear that, but we disregard it. We think it's our imagination. We think that, we're making it up. oh, there's no way, it's a coincidence. We all have that inner knowledge and guidance. And the other thing, the biggest piece of this puzzle that I always like to suggest to people, I call it my workspace. One of my mentors taught me this, is meditation. And people think meditation means sitting high atop a mountain, lotus position, meditating for hours. Heck, you can fit it in for 5 minutes when you're in the bathroom. Break it up in little chunks, but just start practicing trying to quiet your mind. And if you spend 5 minutes and you only get 30 seconds of quiet time, that's okay. It counts. It's like a muscle. It's building on it. There's so many different other kinds of meditation you can try too. You have to find one that maybe will work for you. There's tons of great resources on YouTube. But once we take that time to stop, slow down, take a breath, and start clearing our mind, that voice becomes so much clearer, to the point that when I teach my students, you can go in there with a notebook and Spirit will keep appointments with you. They will be glad to teach, to share, to anything you've got questions with, but it takes practice, because we've been told, first of all, it doesn't exist. That's just, making up, you're just making this up. It's your imagination, whatever it may be. But think about little children, I always say. You've ever watched a baby? The baby's sitting there and they look like they're following something with their eyes around the room, and they're laughing and they're giggling. Heck, there's videos of babies 18 months old at their grandmother's graveyard going, "Grandma, give me a kiss," and saying, "Okay, bye, Grandma, bye-bye." Kids can see that. Same as if they got an imaginary friend. I always tell parents, find out more about that imaginary friend, because your child is innocent. Doesn't, just because the good can connect, there are some things that also can connect once they know we can hear them. So I don't know if that answers your question or not, if there's anything else you wanted to add, Karen, but that's what I try to teach my students when I work with them.
Very, very good advice. And that's what's happened, is you've become a good listener. I've become a good listener. And for the folks out there, what I want to say is we've been taught that the experts are outside of ourselves. The experts, we have to go to the experts. Don't trust yourself. And I say it's the opposite. The expert is within. We need to stop going outside to learn how to do things, and we need to go inside. And of course, meditation is a huge part of that. Meditation has changed my life. Through this whole COVID thing, I started meditating 2 or 3 times a day. I cannot tell you how peaceful my life is.
The other thing I'm going to add with meditation, sorry, Karen, is that it's not just for people with spiritual practices. Big CEOs of corporations will do it. Pro athletes do it before a game. It's almost like that secret hidden little piece of the puzzle that we never learn about in school or college or university or at a job or anything like that. That's what's really important. I don't know if that helps you or not, Zach.
No, it definitely does answer my questions for sure. And I mean, I've even been doing that myself recently, is that I've been doing a lot of, I wouldn't go as far as describing soul searching, but just really just looking into myself and just going with my gut instinct to find out, would this work for me? Would that not work for me? What's the best course of action I should take with this circumstance, whatever it might be? And I mean, sadly, I had to use it, very recently this past weekend, just what Lorilei did mention, that unfortunately I did have to put my dog to sleep on Saturday. And it wasn't an easy decision. And the most important thing is now is I know that my dog's not suffering and my dog is in a better place. So, and then, on another time, or if it's relevant right now, even I can even share an experience that I had yesterday, actually, that made me realize that really that my dog is doing a whole lot better. So yesterday I'd taken a nap, and of course I was still in mourning, so I took my dog's collar and I went to sleep in my bed for a nap and all that. Well, whenever I feel like there's a spirit around, my mouth will get cold. And it's like that feeling that you get like when you recently brush your teeth and you use like a mouthwash that's very minty kind of. it's very cold, very minty flavor to it. Well, that's the feeling that I get whenever there's a spirit around. It's like, oh geez, my mouth is gone cold now.
That's your
So
sign.
but anyhow, I got up, didn't notice anything, so I decided to go out to the kitchen to get something to eat. And I come walking out of the hallway, and there's a foyer that's right there in the living room. I come walking out, and another one of our dogs, so we have Daisy, she's a Chihuahua mix. She just starts barking like crazy. And she's not barking right at me. She's barking in my general direction right there. And I look at her, and she's not looking right at me. She's looking towards where my legs are at. And I say, Daisy. And she stops. She looks at me, and she wags her tail. And I'm like, what are you barking at? You know? So I think that was the way.
Just barking at your baby.
Mm-hmm.
I really believe, Zach, our loved ones never leave us. And
Mm-hmm.
I know we're getting off topic here, but I'll share this very quickly. And that was important that you shared that, because that was a beautiful thing. And this is to reiterate what you're saying. My son that has autism, him and his cat were so close. And she died very, very quickly, unexpectedly. And he was heartbroken. Well, he came into our bedroom that night. And as he opened the door, we heard her meow. And every night for quite a few months after, when I used to go tuck him in at night, she used to sleep with him. You'd feel a plop on the bed and you'd see an indentation. She was there. She was there. There's her baby there. So I want to give Karen enough time, because I know when we get talking, she's a wealth of knowledge, you guys. You have to go check out her YouTube channel. We're going to give her time at the end for sure, to where you guys can find her, because it's really important. I want you to talk about this program that is free. And I think it's important. You put a lot of time and effort into it. I can't believe you gave it away for free. I really can't. And I'm so grateful that you did. Thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. I just wanted to agree with what you and Zach said. I mean, this really happens. We've just been trained not to see it. So I also, just before I get into the quantum health transformation, I also want to urge folks to seek out people like you, Lorilei, who can teach them how to listen. And they can contact me, and I'll teach them how to listen. And you and I may not teach the same way. There's so many roads that lead to the same outcome.
I just said a bunch of different mentors, remember?
Yeah, and you might only need one session. You might not, and it doesn't have to be on and on and on and on, or you might need more. But I'm just trying to say that, yes, sometimes initially a guide is really good to have until you can, venture forth and feel more confident in reaching out on our own.
Evidential proof. We get evidential proof is what I call it. So, you know what, Zach, and Spirit has been nagging at me to say this to you. You called in when I had Rick Wade on here. And I remember, no, you didn't call in, sorry. You were in the chat room, and Rick just all of a sudden explained what my aura looked like. And he didn't see Zach. And Zach said, do you think Rick could see my aura? And I almost said, well, I don't think he can see you. And I didn't say that. I heard Spirit not to say that. So I asked Rick, and he gave Zach a reading of what his aura was. And he told him, he doesn't know Zach from a hole in the ground, about what is coming. I know I've given you that information before. I know you've had it before, and I'm just waiting for the day when it comes true, Zach. So believe in it, because I didn't know it came from Spirit, and he didn't know you from a hole in the ground. But that'll be evidential proof that somebody else gave that to you. But once you start trusting your gut instinct, it starts happening too many times for it to be coincidence. That's evidential proof. Sorry, didn't mean to cut you off, Karen.
No, actually, what you're saying is perfect, because it's so true. And so now, when we're taking our gaze away from what's going on with New World Order, with politics, with protest, taken all away from all of that, now focusing within, we are powerful beyond measure.
Mm-hmm.
We are unbelievable, and we have so much support, but we have free will, and we have to be open to that support and be humble enough to ask for help, to admit that we need help and to ask for the help. I think that's fundamental. And so what was, part of the reason I was given this and part of my instruction was that to be absolutely free. And it took me about over a year to do the first version of it. And I've just, in the last year, redid the whole thing, just made the, the wording a little bit better, just kind of tightened it up a little bit. And if I could just give you an overview at this point, the complete program has been laid out in 9 steps. And the first 3 steps help to open your mind, release you from the prison that you've been brainwashed to stay within, that the construct gave it to our parents, they gave it to us, because up until now, the big thing was to fit in. If we didn't fit in, we wouldn't have the group. And if we didn't have the group, we wouldn't have the protection and we wouldn't have all the things we needed. And so it was really important for everybody to get on board with the same program. Problem is, the program doesn't help us. The program, for lack of a better term, turns us into slaves. And so what happens in the first 3 steps, the first one is all about quantum physics and how to see reality from a quantum perspective. And I'll give you an example. If you took a round sphere and you put a North Pole and a South Pole on that sphere, and you called the North one good and the South one bad, and you're telling me that's all we have? So we've been brainwashed into duality where we think everything is black or white. It's good or it's bad. It's up or it's down. Well, if you look again at the sphere, how many infinite possibilities lie between those 2 super limited extremes? So once we get that, then we start looking at other people as being complex and alive and evolving and learning lessons and having their own journeys. And so that's what the first step. By the way, I've done it backwards on purpose. You start with step 9, and then you go to step 8, and then you go to step 7. And each one is a foundation for the next step. And I did that so that people would start to cast off their linear brainwashing and just shake it up a little bit so they could see it differently. So that's the first step, which is step 9. Step 8 gets into grounding, meditation, like what it does to your brain, what it does to your body, being out in nature. And of course, I bring out my beautiful orgone generators. The people can make their own if they want to, but it's not quite, it's a little harder than it looks. And mine are special because they're ethically made. I know this sounds like a sales pitch, but I just want to tell you the difference, okay? Is that Orgonite is made in a pretty standard way. It's crystals and metal, and it's in an organic resin that shrinks and puts pressure on the crystals. That's what activates them. But what I do is I make sure they're ethically sourced. So a friend of mine makes them. They're not from a factory. They're not from slave labor. They're not from a sweatshop. Then I made sure the crystals are really, really good quality crystals that are inside of them. And then I do a quantum entanglement, which boosts their power even more. I'm not going to talk too much about it. I've got all kinds of videos on my YouTube channel. If people want to go and learn more about.
Karen has a lot of information as well.
Who?
Your webpage.
Oh, my website. Yeah, my website.
We'll talk about it at the end, I know, but I want people to hear that just in case. So at the end, we'll talk about where to find Karen, because you've given quite a bit of information on your page too.
Yeah, I'm all about information. I just feel that so much could be corrected if we just had accurate information.
I just turned off.
Okay, so I make sure you're still there.
Poor signal, and I didn't want it to go off again, so I just turned it off. Sorry, I'm still here.
So step 8 is all about the technologies that we don't realize are technologies. Being out in the woods is technology. Being exposed to the greater microbiome is technology. Getting enough sunshine is technology. Meditating is technology. So it just opens your mind to how many of these technologies are all around us that we could be making good use of. And then step 7 is about core belief systems, identifying what our core belief systems are. Oh, I forgot to mention that step 9, we also do light shadow integration. People are all about walking in the light and being beings of light, and oh, they're all in the light. But guess what? We have a shadow side too.
I teach about that all the time. So important for healing.
Yeah, you can't ignore the shadow. So what we do is we discover the shadow. We recognize the shadow. We take a look at all the shitty aspects that we have to ourselves, and then we integrate the light with the shadow, and then we're cooking with power, because our shadow holds vast amounts of really important information.
Yep. And healing, forgiveness. I mean, we could go on and on about shadow. I think that is imperative. And if people don't believe they have a shadow, look at some of your beliefs. When we say we don't want to be like those people, we don't want to, I'm not that. Really look at yourself. We're all of that. All of us are. We all have the potential to hold. And looking at your beliefs. A lot of people don't believe the beliefs that you carry, even about money that you heard as a child from 0 to 7 years of age. I'm not blaming parents. You and I are parents. We did the best that we could, but we pass that on from generation to generation. And we don't realize money doesn't grow on trees or whatever you hear. And that's just one. There's tons. You need to really kind of pack it. Sorry, go ahead.
Yes. No, I'm sorry. I'm just all chomping at the bit here, because I always get excited when I talk about this stuff. I get spirit and I get all excited and happy. So the step 9 is not only about seeing a quantum reality instead of a binary reality. That's huge. And it also helps us to integrate our light and our shadow. So step 8 was all about the grounding and all the natural technologies. And step 7 is about developing new core belief systems. But then we take a look at integrating our male and our female sides, because one side of our body is yin, the other one is yang. That's male, female energy. That's like positive, negative energy. And we need to integrate that too. And so I've got some exercises that you can do so that you can pull the best traits from whatever gender that you subscribe to. You don't have to act like this because you're a boy and act like that because you're a girl. That's, well, you know, Lorilei, that stuff is out the window, and we're free to become truly unique and expressive human beings.
Yeah.
So then so that's the first 3 is about opening the mind and really getting a grasp at these tools that are right here ready for us to use and experiment with. Then the next 3 steps are all about detoxification. So I talk about, in step 6, I actually cover 3 kinds of detoxification. External detoxification. So for instance, there are chemicals in our toothpaste, in our cream rinse, in our deodorants that are killing us. And we don't understand. Huh?
Can I share something with you?
Sure.
I have really been looking into, because I have a crafting business that I'm building as well. And part of it is all natural body and beauty products. I had no idea how many chemicals are unregulated that they put in that are illegal, that are like, I knew there were some. Folks, if you, I have a resource, feel free to message me on Facebook. I'll send it to you. When you see this list, and it is in practically everything we use. And this isn't hippie new age stuff. This is like, these people that teach this course, and it's free too. It was free. They run it, I think, once a year. It's out there. Like, these people have a biochemistry background that realize that ethically this is wrong. And so they're teaching you how to make your own products. So they're not making money from it. They're teaching you why it's so important. Go ahead, Karen. I'm sorry. I wanted to add that in.
No, I just want to say this also goes back to them rolling back those laws. So now things are not being regulated and we're being poisoned. And so I also give recipes on how to make everything, your own hand sanitizer, your own shampoo, your own massage oil, your own bath stuff. Everything is in there. Very simple recipes. So I not only tell you what the chemicals are, what they do to you, why you want to stop using them, and then I give you recipes on how to make your own. And then I get into internal detoxification. Most people don't realize that almost everything they sell in a food store is not food. It's been artificially changed. And so there's that whole thing. So I talk all about the dangers and how to recognize what's real food. And then I also get into emotional detoxification, because all of our emotions are good. They all work for us. And so we need to take a look at our emotions and how. And I've got, anyway, I don't want to get into it too much because I could spend 2 hours on each step, and I'm just trying to keep it brief. So that's detox. That's one step that's huge. It's four or five videos right there. And then step 5 is all about food. Food is medicine. So understanding that food is a technology. Food, real food has, and you can see it, I have pictures of Kirlian photography where you can see the energetic signatures on foods. Real foods have trapped sun energy that we need to be whole people. So I talk about food, and I give options that are healthy for carnivore, omnivore, vegans, and I point out the pitfalls. Like, for instance, I strongly believe you are no less spiritual if you eat meat. It's about your intention. It's about what your body needs. It's about your blood type, your ancestry. You can't take someone who's Inuit and put them on a tropical diet and expect them to feel great. And you can't take someone from a tropical island and put them up at the North Pole and have them eat whatever, like basically a carnivore diet and feel good. And so there is no one way of eating, but it's how to find your way of eating amongst all of this. And then step 4 is how to detoxify from the construct. And it's all about symbols, and all symbols have power, have magical spells attached to them. And so our language has been constructed in a way to make us recreate an unhealthy reality. And I'll give you an example. We often think we have a justice system. The courts and the laws are part of a justice system. No, they're not. They're part of a legal system. Same as mental health. I've never seen anybody come out of mental health going, oh my God, I got a new lease on life. I feel fantastic. Everyone's drugged up, depressed. It's terrible. Okay, so my point is that we need to address both our internal and our external dialogue to get a grip on the kind of reality we want to create, okay? Mm-hmm. So that's the 3 steps that are detoxification. And then the last 3 steps are all about ascension. And this has nothing to do with religion. This is about, like, for instance, step 3 is all about understanding your perception, how you form your perceptual arena, how you can change. And when we change our internal reality, the external always changes as well. So if you want to know how to change this world and make it a better place, we need to go inside and start changing how we're seeing things in our perceptual arena. And after we do all of that, we can also handle stepping out of the construct, because now we're not just stepping off a cliff and falling. We've got something we can step into, right? And so when we do that, we start to speak our truth for the first time. Before that, we didn't have a truth. We just regurgitated stuff that we've been taught and brainwashed, and we get told on the news in the mainstream. So now you really have your own truth, and that's such a powerful position to be in. And then from there, I talk about, I get into manifesting. how to supercharge your manifesting, how to bring more into your reality of what you want. And I encourage folks to do things like, instead of, wish for the perfect boyfriend or to win $1 million, I used it myself, and I teach how to use it to get out of debt, how to use it to strengthen your relationships with the people you love. Now, you want to get manifesting, let's take a look at the foundation of our lives. What really matters to us, and what could we make better there? And then the rest just happens. Then step 2 is all about integration with your higher selves. So it starts with an analysis of our subconscious. What components go in and form our subconscious? Because that's what's really running the ship. And so what do we do to go in to understand what is influencing our subconscious? And so you take a look at all the different things that we're all doing that influence our subconscious. We go, okay, that needs to change. That needs to change. This is cafeteria style, your party. You pick it how you want it. This is your life. This is your sovereignty. And then the very last step is spiritual exercises. And I know this is going to sound really out there, but when you take any virtue, there's no laws, there's no rules around them. Like, for instance, being patient. Patience is a virtue. When you actually start to exercise patience and you recognize areas in your life where you need more patience, and you start practicing, and that's your intention to become a more patient person, what happens is it opens up a portal. Now, you don't get a big swirling vortex show up in front of your face. That's not what I mean. But you'll notice things in your life will change, and not how you expect them to change.
Never.
And suddenly your life becomes magical. And so it's a 9-step program. It's over 25 videos. It's absolutely free. It's on my YouTube channel. It's on my website. And all I ask is that you share. I won't even know you've shared it. I won't even know who's doing the program. Unless you need some help, I wouldn't even know. But please make use of this. And it's been years of my life to create this gift for humanity. But boy, do I feel good about it.
You know what I kept thinking, Karen, was while I
What?
was listening to you? How do we get this out to the masses? Because you know what, there's going to be people that are going to hear this and go, oh yeah, right. And the one thing I think that people forget too, when they hear the word spirituality, they automatically equate it with religion. Has nothing to do with religion. Even if people don't want to hear the word higher self, you think that's all woo-woo. Subconscious, we've all heard the subconscious, and it truly is. Your subconscious never shuts off, but it speaks a different language too than what your brain, which we think is running the show, it speaks a different language. So there's things that influence you. If you even want to think about your peripheral vision, this is something Spirit has given me. We pick up so much in our peripheral vision that we're not even directly looking at. That's what I like in our higher self, our subconscious too. There might be something playing so far down the road, could even be playing hate messages for all you know. You can barely hear it. Yeah. Your subconscious will pick that up. I mean, there's so many things, and I think it's really comprehensive. I think it's really holistic, and it's not just for somebody going on a spiritual journey. I think you hit the nail on the head that your life will become magical, because all of us, part of even being as a healer myself, energetic healer, the biggest thing I teach is our words, our thoughts, and our emotions are some of the most powerful things out there that actually contribute to a lot of illness. That's why energy healing works. Reiki uses symbols. It's all about intention. It's all about, I always say, I'm not doing the work. I'm just the channel. I'm channeling the energy from, whether you want to call it whatever your belief system is, higher power, the universe, whatever you want to call it. And with the symbols, it's powerful, including crystals are used as well. But that's not the only, a gazillion different modalities. There's a gazillion different people. Everybody's different. So you have to find what works for you. So that's why I like that you give people a lot of options to be able, like you said, a cafeteria, pick what works for you and make it your own.
And I tell everybody in every lesson, don't just go and do because Karen does this. This is supposed to stimulate your imagination so that you can go, wow, I can think of an even better way to help myself. The other thing is each step is divided up between live action and a slideshow primer. And I've done the slideshow primer. It's all written out and I've narrated it. And the reason is because if you can't hear, you can read it. If you can't see, you can listen to it. You can listen to it when you're driving on the highway. You don't have to look at it. I wanted it to be really, really clear. It doesn't adhere to any one philosophical belief system. It incorporates all of them and the science. So for instance, when I'm talking about symbols and the effect they have on reality, I would also draw people's attention to Dr. Emoto, who did messages on water crystals. There's your classic scientific example. Yeah. Okay, so I've tried to, and that it was quite a big job, I gotta tell you. And
I can imagine. I've seen the body of work because I've been sharing it in my group off and on, and I think I started to watch one of them. You've actually really, really stimulated me. I'm going to be going through the program. I've gone through a few of the videos, but I'm actually going to go through the whole program because we can all use this. It doesn't matter what you do in life or whether I call myself a spiritual teacher or not. We all need work. We all need to look at things. And so by using this program, we only got about, let me see, we got about 12 minutes or so. I want to give Zach a chance to ask if there's any questions, but we can all use work. We can all use healing. There's things that people will say, well, I got past things that happened in my childhood or when I was bullied or when I was whatever. Yeah. I don't say that lightly when I say whatever. Yeah. But we all need to unpack that. Heal it, go through it, whatever way, and heal it and release it. And because a lot of people don't realize a lot of that stuff is still holding us back.
Absolutely. And now is a perfect time to create our own new reality. We're never going back to the old one. I personally don't really want the new one they're trying to shove down my throat. I'm creating my own. Do you have any idea how powerful we are? We can fix all of this, all of it. And we don't have to protest. We don't have to get angry. And I just want to say one other real quick thing before you turn it over to Zach. And that I sell these orgone generators that if people want to support my work, they can voluntarily go to my website and order a beautiful orgone generator that they can enjoy and is going to help them out in their journey. And that's how they can support my work. But this is absolutely free. And every time someone orders an orgonite from me, I give them my quantum health transformation brochure, then tell them it's free and explains what all the different steps are basically about. So
I use your orgonite pyramids that I got from you so graciously, and I really appreciate that. I do share it. I've talked about it on many different shows. When I'm doing readings or anything spiritual, anything like that, because they're power generators, basically. It's amazing what they do. Now, Zach, I was wondering, I'm sure you got a lot of questions. So do you have anything you wanted to ask Karen? Because we've got a few minutes left, and I still want to give Karen some time to exactly tell people where they can find her and stuff. So he's always got a little bit of a delay.
No, actually, I love hearing everything that Karen is saying exactly. And a lot of the stuff that she's talking about as well, just taking a lot of the steps really enlightening yourself and connecting more and creating your own reality. I'm starting to do that. It may seem like smaller steps, but they're giant leaps that actually go a long way. Like, for example, for myself, is that, from my cigar smoking, I cut it down to 1 or 2 a day usually. And mostly it's just 1 a day right now. But also at the same time, I'm switching over to organic, non-GMO foods and, care products as well. And I realized it's like when I do this, you feel so much better when you do that. It's because, like what Karen had mentioned earlier, is that there's a lot of these harmful chemicals that they put in all of our care products. I mean, you take a look at the deodorant that I used to use for Speed Stick. what have they found in speed stick? They found chemicals, actually, especially in men, that lower sperm count, that affect your ability to
Fertility.
produce. Fertility. Yes, fertility. And also, and when I stopped using that, it's just, I mean, things have gotten way better for me in that. And then, of course, I switched to products that are more, cruelty free and everything else, with my hair, my shaving kit, everything that I do. And even with foods, when I'm not eating, fried or anything just nasty, it's really horrible for you. Just, it makes you feel full. Not in the sense that you're like bloated, but in the sense that like your body got exactly what you need.
You know what I
And
want to, so Zach, I want to add something quickly, that I want people that are out there listening that, you know what, if you decide to make changes, no matter how small, the longest journey starts with one step. And the other part is, don't be hard on yourself if you fall back and you want to have a greasy food day or whatever. That's okay. It's okay. You know what? You're working on it. Everybody's working. Once you start, we're not perfect. Forgive yourself, move on. If you need it, maybe your body needed it that day if you really needed to have it. But I find a lot of people beat themselves up once they start to make these changes, and then they slip back, and then they're really hard on themselves.
Yeah. This is not about perfection. This is about self-love, learning to be our own good parent, learning to love our bodies, learning to love our minds. And you don't have to do it how I do it, but I'll give you some cool ideas and you can use them as a jumping off point to do your own thing. It's something, just don't do mainstream external advice from experts, because oh, no, you need to go within.
Well, even with a big pharma background, and I'm not telling people don't do what I do, but I don't get me wrong, there's medication has a place, Western medicine. But I seriously look, if there's something that is not acute or life-threatening, I will look at a natural source first. It has its place, and if you're on medication, I'm not telling you to go off your medication.
No, of course not.
It's something to have conversation with your medical health professional, or if you do have coverage or you're able to, maybe add somebody that's a naturopathic doctor. Do your homework, make sure they're properly trained, because some people add that kind of stuff. But take a look or start doing some research and see if there's an alternative. I think you'll be surprised when you start looking at some of the things that are out there, or even, like you said, food as medicine.
You know, I just want to tell you, I know we're running out of time, but I just want to tell you, one day I was out with my brother Dan, and I was really hungry, and he needed to have a smoke, so we stopped, and there was just this weedy patch of a lot, and I said to him, really hungry, Dan, hurry up, I want to go get some to eat. And he said, Karen, open your eyes, you are surrounded by food and medicine. And he started leaping from little plant to little plant, saying, this has 500 times as much vitamin C as oranges, this has 6 times as much, this can be used for this can be used for that. And I went, oh my God, all these people are lined up at the food bank for crappy mac and cheese and stale donuts, and they don't know that the parking lot out back is full of medicine. Sorry, I don't want to get off another tangent. I know we're running out of time.
That's true. Anything you wanted to add, Zach? We got just a few more minutes. I want to thank you for calling in. I know we didn't get you. I should have been able to add you sooner. I just saw your comment because I know you had a lot to add to what we were talking about in the beginning, and I knew that the discussion was going to go there. But I knew we were, as we always do in the show, we end on a positive note. But did you have anything else you might want to ask Karen, or any other comment?
I don't have any questions really, because Karen's already answered any question that I had lined up. And I mean, definitely, I love hearing everything that you're saying. And just curious, for the what is it called? What is it? The machine? Is it that you sell?
Orgonite or orgon generators. Yeah.
It's not a machine, though, so that you know what it is. And the only reason I'm going to explain, Karen will do a better job, is it's made out of ethically sourced resin, right? Like a resin, or what would you call it? Because that's what I would call it.
It's an organic resin, and it's actually made out of microscopic crystals. But it's a liquid state. And then it outgasses, in the beginning, it outgasses. They're completely inert and healthy when you get them. But in the process of making them, they shrink and they put permanent pressure on the crystals, causing a piezoelectric effect. All of this, you can Google Wikipedia and learn more about piezoelectric. They're self-driven. They never need cleaning. They don't have to have a power source. They will work forever.
Say you're
Yeah.
going into a room, Zach, and you know, a lot of us can pick this up, and you walk in, there's been like an argument, or someone's been really angry and you can feel it. If you had your Orgonite with you, you could bring it in there and it will actually help clear some of that energy. That's what we're feeling. Believe it or not.
I need that for my workplace. I definitely do.
Yeah, I figured.
This is my new line. It's shungite. I don't know if you've done any research on shungite. And so I've put my little logo on the front. It's got an amplifying spiral on the back. This one has a really beautiful AAA clear quartz point, shungite. I haven't seen anyone else making them with shungite. This is a solid shungite. So you're getting about 450 grams of shungite in one of these.
To explain to people, shungite, it's a crystal. It's powerful. I usually oversimplification, but I always say anything that's a darker crystal really helps with grounding, with clearing negative energy, anything like that. It would be powerful. Plus the copper that's used in them is a real activator, if you will. It just empowers it. You can even pick it up with Carillion photography, the amount of energy that will generate.
Yeah, I've got some videos on my YouTube channel. I've got categories when you go to the home page, and one of them is all my Zendomes Orgonite. I got how they work, every aspect everything you would ever want to know about them. And this one here is Peridot. We're just making these now. Peridot? Is that how you pronounce it?
I do. I've heard it Peridot, but I say Peridot, and that's Metatron's cube, isn't it, on the front?
Yeah. With a nice
AAA
clear quartz. So these are coming. I don't have them yet. Oh, beautiful. Yeah, I've got one on here too. So
yeah, and that's a symbol, Zach, Metatron's cube. If you look it up, it's under sacred geometry, and Metatron is actually an archangel, and I work with him in the Akashic records. So there's a lot of information, and like I said, once you start opening your mind to this and there's a lot of science behind this. It's not just like woo-woo stuff that most people think it is when you talk about this stuff. I want to thank you, Zach, for calling in so much.
Thank you, Zach. It's been great.
I'm going to give Karen time. We got about 2 minutes left so she can tell people where to find her and everything. So thanks again, Zach.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for allowing me to call into the show. And thank you so much, Karen, also for answering my questions and providing so much insight. I definitely want to check out your website more. Is that where I can be able to find your products at?
Yes, sir. My website is www.KarenHoltonHealthCoach.com, and it's KarenHolton. A lot of people put an E in there and then they can't find me. It's 2 O's, healthcoach.com. That's my website. I am actually getting a new theme installed this week. So if the website's a little bit glitchy, just give it a couple of days and that'll all get ironed out soon enough. And then my YouTube channel is Karen Holton TV, KarenHolton TV. That's my YouTube channel. Now, both my website has all my videos from my YouTube channel as well. So if you want to just go to one place, I would go to my website. And under free resources, there's the complete quantum health transformation program. There's copies of my show, the Quantum Guide Show. There's just
oodles to talk about that.
oodles of information on Orgonite, and I got to tell you, there's one video on my on both that is called Zendome's Orgonite, the technical information. So if you want to know the science behind piezoelectric and how it works with the chakra systems and bleeds over into the metaphysical, it's all explained.
Well, what I want to tell people too, if you follow me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, Tumblr, anywhere under the Angel Rock, under the show promo, right at the bottom, I always put for my guests where you can find them. So it'll be in my Facebook groups everywhere. So if you follow me or look it up under the Angel Rock, you will find where to find Karen. So I want to thank you, Karen. I also want to mention, guys, she has a regular show that she does on YouTube, the Quantum Guide Show, you said it was? I don't have my notes in front of me. So quickly, because we're right out of time, we're already 1 minute over. What day do you do it and what time? When do you upload?
I do it on you generally on Thursdays, but it's been a little hit and miss lately. And it usually the video will get posted around supper time.
Okay.
By the time I get editing and everything. And I want to thank you for your work, Lorilei. You have inspired so many people.
Okay.
You have helped so many people. And I got to tell you, you know, unless you're the psychic that you want to go to, I'm not sure what the technical name is, the psychic person or practitioner that you go to is only as good as how ascended or how awakened they are. So, you know, you're someone who's worked, you've dealt with your shit, you've really explored reality, you're really in touch with your guides, and you're the real thing. And I want to thank you for the work you do.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that. And on that note, I'll let you guys know if you do want to find me to work with me, you can find me on facebook.com/the Angel Rock. I also have 2 groups on Facebook, Paranormal University and the Angel Rocker Tribe. They're growing. Paranormal University is over 1,000 and we're almost at 900 in the Angel Rocker Tribe. We'd love to have you join us there. And any other social media, you can find me. Also, tomorrow night I'll be back with my partner in crime and BFF, Seraphine Hurley, on Tripping the Void. I want to thank you all for being here. Thank you, Zach. Thank you, Karen. I send you all so much love and light. Have a wonderful rest of your evening, day, morning, wherever you may be.
Much love.
Absolutely.
Have a good night, everybody.
Bye, Zach. Thanks.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much.